anybody know what Kentucky's official state drink is? It's actually milk. If you're thinking what I'm thinking, how can it not be bourbon? Have you ever wondered what goes into the bourbon making process? In the following presentation, I will outline what makes bourbon bourbon, the process for making bourbon, and why Kentucky is the bourbon capital. Bourbon's legal definition, it varies somewhat from country to country, but many trade agreements require the name bourbon to be reserved for products made in the United States. Did you know Canadian law requires products labeled bourbon to be made in the United States and also to conform to the same requirements? But in other countries other than the United States and Canada, products labeled bourbon may not adhere to the same standards. For example, the European Union products labels bourbon may not require to these standards. Produced in the United States, made from grain that is at least 51% corn, aged in new charred oak barrels, distilled to no more than 160 proof, enter the barrel aging at no more than 125 proof, and bottled at 80 proof or more. A typical grain mixture of bourbon is known as a mash bill. It is a minimum of 51% corn, with the remainder being rye, wheat, or malted barley, or some combination of these. A mash bill that contains wheat instead of rye products is known as a wheated bourbon. The grain is ground and mixed with water. Usually, though not always, mash from a previous distillation is added to ensure consistent pH. This is known as a sour mash. Finally, yeast is added to the mash and it is fermented. The fermented mash is distilled, typically between 65 and 80% alcohol. It is distilled in a still. The resulting clear liquid, called white dog, is placed in a newly charred oak barrel, during which it gains its color from the caramelized sugars in the charred wood. Changes in the spirit also occur due to evaporation and a chemical process known as oxidization. Bourbon gains more color and flavor the longer they are matured. Maturity, not a particular age, is the goal. Bourbon can age too long and become woody and unbalanced. After maturing, the bourbon is drawn into barrels where it is filtered and diluted with water and bottled at least at 80 US proof. Most bourbon whiskey is sold at 80 proof. Other common proofs are 86, 90, and 100. All bottled and bond bourbon is bottled at 100 proof. Some higher proof bottlings are marketed as barrel proof, meaning they have not been diluted or they have been lightly diluted after removal from the barrels. Bourbon whiskey is sold at no less than 80 proof. If it is sold less than 80 proof, it must be marketed as diluted bourbon. After each use, the oak barrels are not able to be used again, and they are sold to Canada, Scotland, Ireland, Mexico, and the Caribbean for aging other spirits. What makes Kentucky the bourbon capital? It's a perfect combination of water, climate, corn, and the white oak forests. The limestone-rich ground acts as a natural filter to remove any impurities. Did you know that Kentucky produces 95% of the world's bourbon supply? There are 4.9 million barrels aging in Kentucky. This outnumbers the state population. In closing, I have a greater appreciation for what many people might take for granted. And with every sip, I enjoy it more and more. Cheers.